Back in the 1990s, one artist decided to become the Antichrist. And yeah, it shocked people, but it also fascinated them. This was never just about causing a stir for the sake of it. No. Behind all the makeup and the wild stage shows, there was a pretty complex and honestly, a surprisingly solid philosophical blueprint. So let's pull back the curtain and really dig into the ideas that built one of rock music's most infamous and lasting figures.
This quote right here, it just nails it, doesn't it? It gets right to the heart of the whole thing. The character wasn't just some cartoon villain. It was a wrecking ball. The idea was to take a sledgehammer to the way things were, to force society to take a long, hard look in the mirror.
So, okay, where do you even find the intellectual toolkit to build a character like that? The answer isn't just in the history of shock rock, not even close. It's actually buried in some of the most challenging and radical philosophy from way back in the 19th and 20th centuries. All right, first things first, we have to understand the character itself. And the sources on this are crystal clear. The Antichrist superstar wasn't some demon that invaded from another dimension. Nope, this was a homegrown product, a direct reflection of the very culture that was so terrified of it and, in a weird way, created it. The whole goal was to critique, to hold a mirror up to everyone. By becoming the absolute opposite of everything mainstream American culture and religion claimed to value, the character worked kind of like a photographic negative, you know? It exposed all the hypocrisy, all the dark stuff that society was desperately trying to pretend wasn't there.
And this lyric, man, it just perfectly illustrates that point. It turns around and points the finger right back at all of us. The message is clear. The power this guy has doesn't come from some dark, demonic pact. It comes from society's own wishing hell, all of its secret desires, its need for heroes and villains, and its hunger for powerful leaders, no matter how destructive they might be.
To really, truly get this character, we've got to hop in a time machine and go back to the 19th century. We're talking about the German philosopher who famously declared that God is dead, Friedrich Nietzsche. His work, well, it's basically the instruction manual for the Antichrist. The key idea here, the one you really need to wrap your head around, is the Overman, or the Übermensch. Now, this is not a superhero, not at all. It's a person who looks at the world's moral rules, what Nietzsche called slave morality, and sees them as weak, as holding humanity back. So, the Overman's job is to smash those old values and create a brand new set based entirely on their own strength and their own will. And here you can see that huge divide right at the center of Nietzsche's thinking. On one side, you have the values of the herd, playing it safe, fitting in, being selfless. But on the other side, you've got the Overman's values, the drive to take control, to create your own meaning, and to be a radical individual. This clash, this is the engine that drives the whole philosophy. But, and this is a huge but, it's not some story of pure victory. The Overman is actually trapped in a terrible paradox. See, his massive will to power is fueled by an equally massive hatred for any weakness he sees in himself. This creates this constant, painful cycle where he builds himself up and then tears himself down. He can never be satisfied. He can never, ever be at peace. So, if Nietzsche gave us the abstract, philosophical ideas, our next source gave us the practical, hands-on ideology. Back in 1966, a guy named Anton LaVey started the Church of Satan, and he basically wrote down a rule book for a lot of these radical ideas, creating a system that a lot of people still misunderstand today. Now, let's be absolutely crystal clear on this one, because it's important. According to the sources, LaVeyan Satanism is fundamentally atheistic. Satan is not a god to be prayed to. Not even close. He's an archetype, a symbol. He stands for pride, for our basic human instincts, and for rebellion against any religion that tells you to suppress who you are. You can see here that LaVey wasn't just making this stuff up out of nowhere. He was a synthesizer. He was like a philosophical DJ mixing different tracks. He took Nietzsche's rejection of slave morality, he blended it with Ayn Rand's ideas about pure self-interest, and then he threw in a dash of social Darwinism's survival of the fittest. In fact, LaVey himself said his work was basically just Ayn Rand's philosophy with ceremony and ritual added. And you can see these ideas in action right here, in some of the 9 satanic statements. I mean, they're pretty much a direct flip of traditional Christian ethics. Indulgence, not abstinence. Vengeance, not turning the other cheek. It's a very practical and, yeah, unflinchingly brutal philosophy that puts the self above everything else.
Okay, so now we have all the pieces on the table. We've got the character designed to be a mirror to society, we've got the philosophical blueprint from Nietzsche, and we've got the codified rulebook from LaVey. So let's bring it all together and see how the Antichrist superstar becomes the absolute perfect vessel for all of these ideas.
This really is the central question of the character, isn't it? If you create a being whose entire existence is based on opposition, on being against everything, how does that being survive without just tearing itself apart from the inside out? And boom, here's the answer, straight out of the philosophy books. The character isn't supposed to survive peacefully. He's doomed to that exact same cycle of contradiction we talked about with the Overman, a love of power fighting against a deep, corrosive self-loathing. It's amazing, a rock star and a philosopher, a century apart, describing the exact same internal war. This is the absolute key to the whole thing. The entire story of the album is the Overman's paradox brought to life in music. It's the rise to incredible power, the fame, the influence, and then the inevitable crash into self-disgust, the desire to just burn it all down. It's a perfect artistic expression of a really dense philosophical idea. So in the end, the character, just like the Overman, is a temporary thing. It's a figure designed to self-destruct. But the questions it forces us to ask, questions about power, about creating ourselves, about morality, well, those are more relevant right now than ever before.
This lyric from a modern band just echoes that same core challenge from Nietzsche. When all the old systems of value, the empires of religion, of tradition, of society, when they all start to crumble, what's left? What values are you going to create for yourself? That is the question the Antichrist superstar screams at us from the stage, and ultimately, it's a question we're all left to answer for ourselves.